Well, good evening. It is Monday, the 24th of June, Journal 89, and which means that it's T plus 83, 17 more days, just over 2 weeks. Not that I'm counting or anything. Uh, had an interesting conversation today with a friend, also primary myelofibrosis patient in treatment, and we were talking about retirement. and it was interesting because the question that came up was how long did it take me to come to terms with the idea of retirement? How long did it take me to decide to retire and to sell the business and to sell the property? And it was interesting. It was interesting in um, two very different ways. The first was, the answer was almost immediately. Um, Once I recognized the fact that I'd been diagnosed with a really rare form of bone marrow cancer, and one of 18 or 17,000 people out of the entire population of the United States, constitutes very, very rare. Um, and understood the nature of morbidity rates and my own mortality. It didn't take a long time before I realized that as much as I loved the majority of my customers, and as much as I loved the industry that I served all these years, and as much as I loved the people who worked for me, many of whom, for what constitutes a lifetime, 28 years, uh, 15 years, 7, 8 years, um, I didn't want to be that guy. You read all of the personal development books, and even Stephen Covey, in Seven Habits, uh, had that one chapter about, what do you want people to say to you to say about you after you're gone. You're envision yourself in a coffin in a room with people milling about you, and what would you like those people to say about you? And is your life and living your life consistent with that? I want people to say, look, he moved. Um, he's breathing, but that's a different issue. Realistically, I knew that I didn't want to be that guy. I knew that I wanted whatever time I had left. And at the time I was diagnosed, um, it didn't look like that was going to be especially a long period of time. I had no way of knowing how long I had the disease before being diagnosed, other than to realize after I saw the other two oncologists that I saw, um, that I was really, really early, uh, as far as diagnosis went, because most people don't get diagnosed until their symptoms present, and my symptoms didn't present for another probably 4 years, 4.5 years. All of my symptoms didn't present until 4 years. I did have some random things that nobody could figure out until after I was diagnosed, in which case it became apparent that's what it was. But I knew I needed to spend the time that I had with the people that I cared most about, and I needed to watch um, our kids in the midst of enjoying their lives. I knew I needed to watch my grandchildren. We had just had our first when I was diagnosed. Um, I recognized that it was, actuarially uh, sound to think that Leslie would continue after I was gone, regardless. I mean, that's just the numbers. And I knew that she'd be a lousy landlord. And I decided that I was going to sell the business and sell um, the land and retire at that point. Well, I mean, it's 70. Um, that's not a bad decision anyway. It's 12-hour days, and all the stress and aggravation get to be a lot to deal with. And all three of the oncologists that I was seeing at that time said that I had to eliminate stress from my life as quickly and as completely as possible because it's a stone cold killer. So I went ahead and listed the business, and was fortunate enough to find um, a buyer. I had some caveats. I had some conditions, and one was that it was an all cash deal. The other was that my crew had remained together for at least a year, um, all of which were met by the buyer. And I haven't looked back. I think it was absolutely the most intelligent, uh, important decision I've ever made. Uh, Even just the reduction of the stress, knowing that it was going to be sold before it was sold, and then certainly afterwards, as I awaited treatment. Um, I can't even imagine what it would be like not to have, to have the anxiety and stress, the burden of running a business while you're going through that. Now, having said all of that, the other part of this equation that's really fascinating is it was a lot easier to make that decision having worked 52 years in the same trade, uh, having been an entrepreneur for much of that time. Um, the question has to be, would I have made the same decision had I not been 70? We sold the shop in 2017, I believe, uh, and I was 71. What if I had been diagnosed in my 50s or my late 40s? Would I have still been so quick to retire and sell the shop? And the answer to that question is, while I'd like to think I would, certainly wouldn't have retired. Um, but would I have still exited the business? I would probably like to think that I would have done that, and then found something else, um, something else that was fulfilling and satisfying, something else that contributed uh, to the world in some way, some service related endeavor. But I can't be sure that that's the truth of the matter. I can't be sure that that's really what would happen. And the other issue is, for those people who are significantly younger and have that issue of coping with illness, what do you do? I mean, how do you keep your business running? I mean, how do you take care of your people? And this may be another instance in which I'm fortunate and I didn't have to deal with that. But I think it's important to consider. I think I made the right decision. I know I made the right decision for me. I know I made the right decision for my family. I can't conceive of having gone through what I just went through with with the knowledge that I had other people, clients and staff, depending on me. But would I have reacted the same way when I was 55? And if I did, would the outcome be the same? Now, I don't, I don't know that wasting a lot of brain cells on this um, makes any sense, because that's not the reality that I faced. And I'm usually a pretty good pragmatist when it comes to dealing with stuff like this. But the fact that the person that I was talking to is probably, who's a contemporary, probably going to make the same decision, um, seems to make a lot of sense. Certainly to me, and after the conversation we had, perhaps to her as well. Um, so I think that the lesson that comes out of that is be as productive as you can, um, serve as well as you possibly can. Uh, so there's not a whole lot left to accomplish if and when you're confronted with an unscheduled retirement. Put your mask on first. Make sure you get paid for what you do, for what you know, and make sure you pay yourself first. Um, you can't take care of anybody else unless you're taking care of yourself. Something to think about. It certainly occupied most of my afternoon thinking about the conversation that we had, and that it was meaningful, and it was meaningful to both of us. Other than that, everything is going well. My numbers today were okay. They were just okay. They were relatively stable. Platelets went up slightly, ever so slightly, but my hemoglobin dropped, which probably means I'll need blood Thursday or next Monday, unless something really wonderful happens and uh, I become a hemoglobin generating machine. Uh, but until then, we'll worry about it when it happens. Otherwise, stay well, take care. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye bye.